She's got the looks that kill.
You're supposed to sing, man.
Oh, crap.
This is the one rare occasion where I actually gave you the title of the song that I was going to riff on.
Sure.
Asked you to learn the lyrics.
Oh, she's got the looks.
Okay.
Right. Rob, you had one job.
Yeah, you only had one freaking job.
I'm not very good at doing my job.
Execute.
I did not execute.
All right, here. Ready? From the top. She's got the... That's what you gotta do.
Just right away?
Ready?
She's got the looks that kill!
Okay, that's good enough. That was excellent.
Oh, awesome.
Could have been more excellent.
Could have been excellent. Party time.
Excellent party time. But, you know, yeah, exactly. You have to roll with the punch.
You know, I had a flashback. I was listening to the radio and I heard some Nirvana, and it reminded me of when Mike Myers was guest VJing on MTV when that was still a thing. But he was as Wayne. And from Wayne's World, and he's like, "Listen to this new Nirvana song. They're singing about me. Hey, Wayne, I got a new." You know. Anyway.
So for you kids out there, the radio is this device that takes waves and plays sounds through speakers, and MTV. It's an acronym for music television, where you can use a television to look at videos of bands playing this music that also comes through your speakers.
Wow. Wow. Is that like YouTube?
Mind blown.
No, because you had to catch it live, or you had to tape over your mom's novella and then get into that whole argument.
Yeah.
And,
what does that mean? What does that mean to
your mom's novella?
What does that mean to tape over?
So you had...
You know what? You're like the ultimate smartass. You know? It's amazing. Dude, I love it. I love it.
I just speak from experience. I mean, where was I going to get
some goofy experiences in your life?
He's actually the king of observational humor, kind of like Jerry Seinfeld.
Yeah.
It's like, I'm not trying to make a joke. I'm just observing weird things in life, you know?
Yeah, when I listen back or watch back these episodes, you crack me up, dude, every single time. There's always a couple of things.
There's always just it's like Stephen Wright, deadpan, just
Yeah, and this Joker right over here is just a Joker.
When I've had
Rob is like hilarious.
I'm taping over my mom's VHS tape of a telenovela. And with MTV, so I could listen to "Video Killed the Radio Star." Or Duran Duran or something. Yeah,
but wasn't like the first video Dire Straits, "Money for Nothing," or at least it was one of the big.
I thought it was just what I sang.
No, I think they sang that afterwards because video can't really kill the radio star until MTV.
There is, I think you should be able to buy. Somebody a while back posted, and I downloaded a bunch of MP4s or whatever. Like someone had the first week recorded of MTV.
Oh, no way.
And I watched a lot of it. And it took me back. I remember it was like magical. And it's like, yes, I'm just going to, in fact, if MTV, if I could just watch it all over again, like the first 5 years, whatever, I would just sit in my Matrix pod and just watch it, and I'd be so happy.
Did you find now? So, Rob, putting the music aside, right, which was the core of the content, did you find the way it was shot, the references to yesteryear? Like, did you find them cool or boring? Were you just as engaged as the first time you saw it? What's your take?
I guess you'll never have that spark that you would have the very first time.
Like chasing the dragon thing?
Like, yeah. But
no, definitely.
it's just like sometimes when you watch older movies that you loved when you were a kid, but maybe they didn't age well. And you're like, oh, wow, it's not that good anymore.
Yeah.
But then some of them do stand the test of time and are still great. And so I think it's a mixture. You watch some of those videos. It was so raw. It was, especially those early videos. These bands didn't know what they were doing.
Oh yeah, the dancing was like goofy.
There was a lot of, some bands would just sit there and play with a video recorder. Some would just do all kinds of silly stuff. And then over the years, the production values started to go up and a lot of money was being spent. Gosh, those were great times. Think about all those new wave bands that were not being played on the radio that you never would have heard of except for MTV. And then later in the clubs.
The other day, man, we're going on a tangent, but what else is new? But context of all things old.
We always
we have experienced the MTV as launched. Now we may feel however we may feel about watching it from back in the day and what that has become. Well, the other day I was showing my kids the original Godzilla movie. I was showing them Lost in Space, the series.
Wow.
And I was trying to explain to them like how impressed I was and scared with the Godzilla thing. And the 9-year-old is looking at me like, you're such an idiot. Like there's nothing scary about this. And she's like, Papa, they are puppets. You can tell it's a puppet.
That's a guy in a suit.
That was 70 years ago. We had puppets. We had no CGI. We had no green screens. You don't know how good you have it, you ingrate.
Yeah.
But she wasn't shocked. She was like, she walked away. She's like, no.
You know what? That's what I feel about developers nowadays. They don't appreciate all the stuff that the old people, the ancient people like Rob did back in the day, having to deal with all the, basically having to invent the crap. And I think a lot of this surfaces around this topic of, app stores and taking 30% and all this stuff, all this hoopla about that. It's like, these younger generation developers don't realize how tough it was incredibly hard to start a software company, And, so anyways, I'm not going to go off on that because that's not what we're supposed to talk about today.
What are we supposed to talk about?
I think we're supposed to talk about how to manage how to run a successful IoT project or how to
not so fastly.
We want to help our audience here that are struggling or may not be struggling or most likely struggling.
So have you arranged some special guests that are going to tell us how to run a successful IoT project?
Yeah, you guys.
Have you found some unicorn out there? Some mystery guest?
I don't know. Maybe that's why we don't have a guest.
Hey, I do want to say, I notice you guys are doing a great job of repping your cities. I like the Portland shirt,
that's right.
And the Chargers. I'm not repping Seattle, but
no.
Come on, you're good. You've got
you're repping wine.
It's my spiritual home, way out. No one's ever heard of Walla Walla, but
no, I have.
It's got.
I have
wine.
Been there.
Great Pinots, right?
No. Not you. You're thinking of. The Willamette Valley south of Portland where the good Pinots are.
Oh, all right.
It's got to be cooler and damper to do the Pinots. Pinot is a hard grape to get right. It's really difficult. That's why a lot of people don't try, except for every winery in the
they have wineries in the Walla Walla.
A million of them, but they're not. I don't know.
What are they growing out there? I thought it was
Cabernet Sauvignon, Syrah, Merlot, just your typical Bordeaux variety.
Bordeaux stuff.
Yeah. So a successful IoT project. So,
I mean, come on, dude. You would not be where you are if you didn't at least have a couple of successful IoT projects, and you too, man.
No,
Yeah.
it's just
You can't be like screwing everything up all the time, right, David? I mean,
oh, yes, I have so much, I stink of
Stephanie.
failure.
Yes.
Oh, good. Stephanie's here to save us.
Oh, she's gonna save us. Yay. Stephanie gonna save us.
Let's just wait until that Whisper bandwidth kicks in.
Yeah. Oh, no. She's out in the middle of a waterfall methodology land.
Right. No idea.
So we'll see if she pops up. But you were saying?
Yeah. Well, but no doubt about this important topic is we've seen these stats. I think, what is it? Over 75% of IoT projects are failing at the proof of concept stage. And so that's kind of a bummer. And hello, Stephanie.
Yeah. Hey.
Good morning.
Girlfriend.
Good evening. Good evening, good afternoon, wherever you are.
Where are you?
Good.
You're in a treetop hunting thingy. I don't know how you call it.
Behind me, you can't see. You see the river?
Nice.
I think you have a flying saucer that landed right behind you. What is that thing?
But we're kind of on a ridge with the RV. There's the bus.
Oh my God. There's the bus.
Wow.
Nice.
Wow.
Do it.
You sure you didn't just bring your entire house?
We pretty much do.
That's awesome.
Pretty much. And this is our neighbors. This is our friends' bus.
Yeah.
They have a fifth wheel.
Yeah.
As one does. That's awesome.
It's been fun.
But
it's drizzling right now.
Drizzling.
Go ahead. What are y'all talking about today?
We're talking about how to run a successful IoT project.
Yeah, exactly. So
come on, make our audience feel better. Come on.
As usual, I'll definitely have to start that. For you to run the IoT project, you have to start with a simple business problem that has value, because that's where the running starts, right?
Yeah.
So now but to stick to let's assume that there's value in a problem to be solved. If the problem could be solved, there's going to be, great ROI, and, it's going to be all hunky-dory for the customer and the end user. So let's just assume that at this point, we are on the 25% of the successful IoT projects, right? So we got it. There's value. The POC went well, and like the customer is going to buy. So how do we make it successful, and how do we scale, right? So I will start answering that question by extracting all of the evidence from that POC and all of those people that said that there was value and that they saw it and they get it and that they want to move along with it, to bring the other stakeholders around this. Because unless you're doing an IoT job with a small company with like one business unit, for you to scale this at enterprise level, you're going to have to bring other stakeholders that can see the value of something, so that you can almost rinse and repeat. And without, and again, also making tons of assumptions that the technology is sound, is secure, we know what's going where, who's reporting, then it's just a bunch of good old program management, as boring as that sounds. But anyway, so
don't tell that to a program manager.
Well, because we don't talk about it in the context of like IoT. These are the unsung heroes. Like the folks doing stuff on the back, and like, no, it's like they're literally like doing this to carry the project. And I don't think there's any shame in that. And most customers know it. Automation is getting us further and further into these projects every day, but there's still, like a lot of manual tinkering that needs to happen to make these things magically happen. So a strong PMO team will get you a long way, or just good automation tools.
Yeah. Wow.
Yeah.
There you go, folks. I guess we're done. It's that easy.
Wow.
Super easy.
Yeah.
Boom.
But Rob, you were mentioning the POC stuff, right? 75%.
Don't worry about the 1,000 different skill sets you need to pull it off.
I skipped all that because the POC went well.
When you're trying to land the deal with a customer, you definitely gloss over all that stuff for sure, because they'll be like, "What?" Until
the contract is signed, then we get into details.
Well, it's because I think about, just being in technology all these years and primarily software. I've just been on a million software development projects, whatever, client server, blah, 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 web, ERP. And so there was, it was like you had good developers, and you're right, you had project managers, and you just had your Gantt charts, and you had people who knew how to write code for that particular language and talk to this database and blah, blah, blah. With IoT, it got weird because it required a broad cross-section of skills. And so if you go from left to right on your radio dial, folks, over here, you've got the hardware. You've got some kind of compute thing, and it's really small, smaller than this. And it's also has sensors and maybe actuators connected to it. And it's could be attached to a machine. It could be embedded in a machine or something like that, or it could be an environmental sensor. So you've got sensors and actuators. Sensors sense, actuators act. And so you have to have hardware people. You've got to have people who can do embedded software on that hardware. So there's that expertise, which is obscure embedded developers. They kind of pull together all the values from the sensors and bundle it, and then they're going to send it over a network of some kind. And so you've got to have some kind of networking on this. It could be Wi-Fi or cellular or Zigbee or Z-Wave or Bluetooth or blah, 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 Thread, whatever. And so you have to have some expertise in networks. Then there's maybe an edge gateway thingy or not, especially if you're in a factory and you're doing the industrial version of this, which is not this, then you might have a serial port going to something called a programmable logic controller, PLC, which most people in IT have never seen in their lives. Let's just come right out and say it. Most people who work for all the big IT consulting firms that are doing all these gigs, or even boutique consulting firms, let's just say it, they've never been in a factory in their lives, or doing things for transportation or anything major. It was always a bunch of computers and having screens so people could type stuff in. That's what most software projects were. And so we're taking those same people, though, and saying, I need you to do this IoT stuff. And it sounds really cool, but it's not really easy, and it requires a lot of skills that they don't have. And so you may have to enter, and then usually there's some kind of software development kit to send that data over said network securely, some bizarre protocol. It's not just REST or CORBA or DCOM.
Oh my God.
Or RMI.
Oh my God.
Or SOAP.
Oh my God.
It could be weird things like MQTT or COAP or who knows what.
They're like digging up bodies, dude.
Their bodies all over the place. And then someone's like, there's this server thing, or it could be a cloud thing. And you got people going into if it's a public cloud, Azure or AWS or Google or somebody like that. Or are there other, IBM, Alibaba. Yeah. We'll give some love to some of the other guys. Configuring that stuff. And so data's arriving, you're configuring and registering devices, and data's arriving, and you got to grab data out of a message queue of some kind. They all have different names, and then send it somewhere and do something with it. You're analyzing it, you're taking actions. You may send a message back to the thing even. Anyway, I think what I'm getting at is there's a lot of vertical domains of knowledge you have to have. And then you got to have the actual, the business expert, the person who knows the business of what you're trying to do, sitting next to the geeks you have a bunch of geeks of different domains that you had to pull together, kind of like the A-team or something, and who know all those things. And so, it's tough. I remember, I hate saying the early days of IoT because, Rick Bolano will say, you don't know about the early days, son. And so, but I remember at Microsoft, when we were, Microsoft was really late to the party in IoT, obviously way behind ThingWorx. And there was this discussion that an IoT project was so transformational. And obviously we got a lot of help from Gartner and Accenture and Forrester and McKinsey.
Don't look at me.
They created this impression that this was the biggest thing ever in technology.
$1 gajillion.
Yes, a cajillion. And so here's what was said. IoT projects were a board level decision at the company, the customer, because you were going to boil the whole ocean and transform that. I mean, because IoT is the underpinning, the bedrock of just mega digital transformation. And so it was a board level decision. It was going to be huge. And so some people, bit on that one and tried to boil the ocean. And I think we all know what happened there, don't we?
You see, when you go to the cutting room, we're going to have to like put Rob's part, because I did all that already, which is why it was so easy. This was pre-POC. All these things happened pre-POC. And then we took it at the board level. And then I ended with the PMOs.
There you go.
We just need to reverse the order.
Yeah. There you go.
And if you want to know whether people have been in a factory, just show them a picture of an elephant and an RS-232 cable, and tell them to tell you which one is the animal.
And if you've been doing development for a long time, like your Uncle Billy here, you would know what an RS-232 cable was, because we used to connect those things from the back of your PC. Does anyone remember COM ports?
And they have to go like this?
Do you remember that this used to be attached to a COM port with a serial cable, or your keyboard, or a modem, like from US Robotics? That's how we communicated. That was called the internet, or a BBS, or some Z modem. So anyway,
welcome to the History Channel.
Welcome to the History Channel.
The IoT History Channel.
Oh, but you nailed it. You nailed it. As I learned over time, success in IoT required you to be on the History Channel. Because it turned out that success in IoT was success with old things.
Old things.
Because hundreds of IoT companies sprung up looking for the bag of gold. And they went into customers and I said, I need you to rip and replace all your old stuff and replace it with shiny new Raspberry Pis and Arduinos and stuff like that. And then it's going to work. And those customers said, get the hell out of my office, son. Are you crazy? This is a business here. This isn't your science project. PC load letter. And so that's what happened. And so success in IoT turned out like you had to talk to old stuff. And in order to talk to old stuff, you had to know some old Jedi ways that young Padawans didn't know.
Yeah. Right? And then you had to talk to old people like you.
Yes. You had to talk to old people.
And like Rick.
Yeah. Yeah. And they're like, well, how do I do this? And so,
there is something, poetic and artistic of analog inputs.
Yes.
Look at this guy.
I mean, come on.
Yeah.
This guy is good. Starting to jump on the whole Battlestar Galactica bandwagon, man. You and your analog. Who got you onto that stuff?
Analog. Well, remember, I used to be a disc jockey, so put the needle on the record.
Stephanie, what's your reaction to the rant so far?
I don't know. I mean, I feel like each their own. I don't think that there is a good, proper way to do X, Y, and Z for any of this. But it's weird because, when I used to work at Alcatel in their R&D division, and everything was so methodical. You were talking about project management, program management.
Yeah.
They didn't know what was going to be what, but they would develop all of these things, and they would have all their engineers and their project managers and all that, but they all knew what they were trying to kind of go towards. No. And they had some successes and they had some failures, but it was programmatic. But they still were casting a wide net in terms of what's the next big thing that Alcatel is going to develop telecom wise. Yeah. And then they'd pull the mechanical, the ASIC design engineers and all the software developers together, and they would figure it out. So it's you were talking about all these different groups of people. It's kind of like the same thing in R&D. We're still at a stage where we're trying to figure things out. And I think that it's different for each business, but you got to have the business expertise tied in there some way or another. And sometimes you kind of have to have some bright business people that understand some of the geek talk that you were talking about. Because if you don't have any jive there, you're going to have one group wanting this and the other group wanting that, and it just never works out.
Yeah, you're making a really good point, because I personally managed and program managed probably 100 projects over my consulting career, and I'll have to tell you, there wasn't a single one that was the same. method in terms of methodology, the way we approach project planning, execution, resolution, all that stuff was different. And, what seasoned project managers understand is that you have to adapt your approach and also your teams and manage your resources based on what's on the ground, right? The client's environment, their readiness to take on certain types of approaches. Like, a classic example is, this whole agile versus traditional waterfall. As much as the agile camp would like to say that agile will save the world from all of its ills, I'm sorry, there's just organizations that are not ready for it. They don't care for it. They're uncomfortable with it, and they will never support that process in a way that it will deliver in a great, in a successful outcome. And so those are the types of things that project managers need to realize. And I think, there's so many good points you guys are making. It's like, frig, I actually, for this episode, prepared a list, and I was just going to listen to you guys and maybe just backfill on stuff you guys didn't bring up. But
here's another.
You guys are making great points.
Well,
good job.
Inspired by Stephanie's R&D.
So inspirational.
So if being the topic of what makes a successful IoT project successful, it's also the vendors or suppliers' ability to show evidence rapidly. And here's what I mean: if you've done things before, and you're presented with some machine that you haven't connected before, you should be able to say, well, tell you what, I think I'm 70 or 80% there, and I can show you why I think I'm 70 or 80% there. Give me a brief amount of time for me to figure out how do I connect into this machine who the last person that touched it died 18 years ago, but the machine still works. So folks who have a lot of expertise and have actually delivered a lot of these projects drive success from that experience. To be able to say, don't show up and saying, I can do 100% today, is more, I've got all these tools, I've got access to skill sets, to Rob's point. And that also drives success, the ability to iterate, coming from a place of previous delivery to change a handful of things to deliver something else. That's my long way of saying it. If you haven't done it 100 times, you're going to suck at it for some time before you're able to.
Yeah, but you know what? That's the case with most projects. You're either going to have some folks who just don't have the full skill sets that you would like to have in order to do particular things on the project. And, oftentimes, for any project, there's a learning curve, some degree of learning that has to happen. And the important thing to do is mitigate the risk. Well, number one, recognize what those problems are or those gaps are, and then mitigate the risks and impacts that those gaps may present through the project, the course of the project. I mean, that's what a project manager needs to do. But to your point, Rob, I mean, that stuff can be really tricky because you're not dealing with just software. And I think a lot of people go in thinking about IoT projects as being this software thing, and it's all about the data. It's like, no, this is about a friggin' system. So you have to take system engineering mindset. You have to understand you're developing a system, meaning a mix of hardware and software to deliver a service that then finally delivers a solution or an outcome. That's what you're designing. It's not just software or configuring a packaged solution. It's much more complicated than that. And I think one of the things I oftentimes see on projects is that nowadays is that there's no architect or very minimal engagement or involvement or governance role for an architect to come in and say no to things, or even to, in the early phase, to help flesh out What are the gaps in the technology and the integration architecture that need to be resolved? Like what you're saying, David, right? You just have a bunch of hackers going around hacking. It's like, as great as that sounds, it doesn't work.
I saw the movie Hackers.
You did?
Yeah.
Well, Leonard, it's one of these niche examples.
Yeah.
But in my limited, as it may be, experience, industrial and process control system integrators, I think they do lead with their architects, to have the initial conversations with projects, and those guys are very comfortable saying no. Like if the vision of how they do Industry 4.0 and whatever that means doesn't align with what the customer thinks it is and what that project, those folks who say no, I don't think we're going to work together. Go get someone else. Which doesn't happen as much in the more generic IoT world. Anyway, just you trigger that comment. Oh, there's someone behind Stephanie.
Oh,
does he know IoT?
It's not a flying saucer. You can cook on it.
No, he looks very analog.
You're making the Zoom conference here.
Hi.
Can we sell him some automation?
That's our neighbor.
Awesome.
Like a little AGV to take his little, whatever he was dumping onto the fire pit, automate it, save him time.
So what started happening though after the dismal failure of so many big boil the ocean IoT projects is people are like, whoa. Or does anybody remember? I'm not going to name any names of companies.
Man, are those projects or strategies?
There was a bunch of companies that started out during the early days of IoT, 2012, that says, we're just going to connect your things. Let's connect your things. And their whole strategy was just connecting your things. There was no after that happening. And anyway, they all did massive layoffs and had to reset and everything like that. A lot of companies were like that. So when people were overwhelmed and they had not listened to David, then they said, let's try a different strategy. Let's tell people to start small and just solve one little small thing, which is very MVP-ish, leanish.
Are we going Vasquez maturity model again?
Well, it's important. So one of the things with applying the Toyota way, the lean manufacturing to lean software development and things like that, is to, have you ever seen you do the MVP and a different, and I'm not talking about agile. I think it's funny though, Leonard talking about how people aren't ready for agile. Do you remember how long ago the manifesto was written? It's like 20 years ago.
Like a gazillion years ago.
I read that stuff, Mr. Vasquez, at Powell's Technical Books in Portland, Oregon.
Powell's House of Books.
And they used to have a whole separate giant building for technical books back in the heyday when technology was important. Obviously, it's not anymore. And it was like my favorite place to go because we go to Portland all the time because my wife's parents are down there. And there was nothing I loved more. But I remember reading about pair programming and the Agile Manifesto, and it was a whole bunch of things. And it's so funny that 20 years later, we're like, are people ready to get off waterfall? It's ironic. So MVP was you're building a car, but instead of like the Big Bang Theory with waterfall, like we're going to start working and 5 years later, a car will appear. Instead, it's like in the first week, I'm going to give you roller skates. And the second week, I'm giving you a skateboard. And the third week, I'm giving you a scooter. And the fourth week, I'm giving you a bicycle. And the fifth week, I'm giving you a motorcycle. And the sixth, that kind of thing. It's always working. Whatever you deliver every day is working code, even if it does almost nothing. I'm a big fan of that stuff and it goes back to confidence for the customer. And so you should do this with IoT as well, because when you do the Big Bang Theory and they go, I hope something's working out. They've been working on this project for 5 years and I've already lost my job because I didn't deliver. If you're always showing something, it builds confidence with the customer. They're like, oh, you're really making progress. This is great. So folks, start out with the smoke detector. The smoke detector of IoT. Just instead, don't start with all the pie in the sky stuff. Start the most simple thing when I think of IoT, I think of early warning.
Smoke detector. What about
a smoke detector?
Doorbell?
A doorbell.
Come
sure.
on. That's like super simple. Smoke detectors are actually kind of complicated, man.
But smoke detectors epitomize what the early warning capabilities of IoT is. It says, I detected something in the air and I went, and set an alarm and warned you that there's smoke. And so there could be a fire and you should go. Yeah. People need to get back to the basics and do the little smoke detector project. And so whatever that is, you might have big ideas, but start small and show quick wins on small things so that people go, okay. Because, here's the problem with IoT. And we've talked about this before. It's kind of like, how I say there's problems with security. So no one wants to pay for security because it's like an insurance policy. And people think, oh, I can't believe I'm paying for all this extra money for something that doesn't go to my bottom line and it may happen to me. Sometimes IoT feels that way because a lot of the IoT projects are saying, I'm doing this in my factory and we got an assembly line making cars and I'm instrumenting all my industrial robots on the assembly line because I'm going to detect or predict failure before it happens. Because if my assembly line goes down, it's costing me a lot of money. It's disrupting my supply chain because I'm doing real-time, lean manufacturing. So it feels like an insurance policy sometimes when you're doing IoT, depending on the use case. And so it's like, I spent a ton of money to do this IoT thing and I didn't feel any benefit right now. And so sometimes people struggle with that, just like security. They don't feel a benefit right now. They may feel it if somebody hacks them, but they'd never know.
Well, yeah. And that's the beauty of the whole Battlestar Galactica analogy, right? The air gap. As soon as you start making it like exposing it to Cylon attacks, next thing you know, you open up a whole Pandora box of security concerns that didn't exist before. So the design assumptions all of a sudden have to change, and so do your development processes. But one of the things I want to go back to what you're saying about the agile stuff. One of the things they have to be careful about is, and using agile methodology in my experience. And I've used all the methods, right? DSDM and friggin' extreme programming.
Nail it and scale it.
What?
Nail it and scale it.
I've done that too. But my point, you made me forget my.
Sorry.
Sure.
So you've done all of them.
Yeah.
I want to go to all school.
So RUP, all that crap. So there's a difference between using agile, phased delivery. Okay, phased delivery, and we used to do that all the time. It's more of a hybrid approach of using some agile principles, but for the most part, kind of a hybrid, agile, traditional waterfall type method. Versus what you're trying to really, what the benefit of agile really is supporting progressive elaboration. Agile works best when you and the customer really don't have the absolute clear idea of what the end product needs to look like. And so I think and some people will probably disagree with what I just said, but it's something to think about. Because I think I've seen a lot of agile efforts fail, and you still see tons of, programs out there trying to teach people how to adopt agile after all these, a couple of decades, right? How come this isn't mainstream? How come we're still struggling to inject agile methods into organizations? Because frankly, it doesn't make sense for a lot of things. And I think people need to, and when you're looking at your projects, you have to understand that and use the method appropriately, not institute it because it's some sort of, SDLC religion that you've subscribed to. So that's the one piece of advice that I think is very important for a lot of project managers out there, as well as development teams. Traditional, the old school, waterfall, sometimes it makes absolutely sense. It's a great sense, especially if you know what you're building.
Especially if you're building a spaceship.
Yeah. Really?
I'm not going to build my spaceship with user stories from my agile methodology and people iterating quickly and screwing up every day and whatever.
Yeah,
You're absolutely right. Because some things are really, really serious.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. And so many people have used agile, extreme programming, a lot of those different variations, Scrum, stuff like that, as an excuse to do cowboy programming.
Yeah.
And so, I don't have to do requirements. I'm just going to wing it. Like when I first learned to write code, I'm just going to start doing shit and stuff will blow up.
Testing. What's testing?
We've gone full circle to my 1954 Godzilla reference and how they used to use puppets and it looked fantastic.
Again, awesome.
Yeah,
great storytelling.
Lean storytelling there. Just day one, use a puppet. Day 100, a real Godzilla.
Yeah, put somebody in a friggin' Halloween costume and they changed the world.
Like we had puppet King Kongs, and in the late 70s, we did King Kong, where they built a giant King Kong robot that climbed up the World Trade Center.
Yeah. And then the last one that they did, I think it was all CGI, and it looked really scary.
Yeah. Hey, what did you guys think about Godzilla versus King Kong, the recent one?
I have not seen that one yet.
You should see it. It is badass.
Really?
Awesome.
It's great. Mechagodzilla was like friggin' ridiculous.
It was. As I always give advice that they don't listen to all the time, it's just like, listen, learn from Pacific Rim. People came to this movie to see just fighting happen the whole time. Robots and monsters fighting.
Familiar kaiju, not like
but all those stupid other storylines with human beings involved, get them out of there. Get them out of there.
No.
And so they just want to see Godzilla and King Kong and Mechagodzilla fighting the whole time.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
If otherwise, go see Titanic if you want to see people.
If you want to see people, go see Titanic. Exactly. No, you're so right. You're so right. It leads us to thinking, what are the kinds of IoT projects that feel like they give you a return quickly and not a return that when something bad happens? Maybe that's automation. Maybe that's something that's happening in real-ish time.
I mean, here's I don't know if this will answer the question, Rob, but at least from an IoT, what I'm going to call it an IoT house. I think a lot of IoT houses that back in the day would basically, it was all CapEx. Like, hey, IoT project, I'm going to do software, hardware, delivery, maintenance, and it's a gazillion bucks.
Yeah.
I think where the ones that are doing it well, and they've been doing this for some time now, but they've turned their own offerings as a service. And they're more profitable because they're telling customer, look, man, it's for this thing is $20 a month. It includes the hardware, and just go do your thing instead of it's $1,000 for the hardware, and here's the install, and here's the maintenance. So I think the IoT shops who have leveraged the as a service business model to include the entirety of an offering under one price, they are seeing a good ROI. And remember, these are the same folks that are bringing the entire ecosystem with them, right? Because they hired the people with the skill sets. They had to buy the hardware. They had to put it together. They had to code it. They brought it through the machine. So that's my reaction to your question, Scrum Master Obi-Wan.
You're right. No, you're right. You've got me thinking. I have to go back to my origin story of doing IoT in the 90s with vending machines. And when the value came daily, like for instance, if I'm doing predictive maintenance or just early warning maintenance on a machine that might fail, it's an unknown period of time into the future when IoT will pay off for me, but I don't know when it's going to be. With the vending thing, it was a daily thing, and it started off with optimization. It was actually, well, not only did we not call it IoT, but it was the inventory product is what it was. It was like, oh, this new thing called wireless came out, was primitive wireless data networks and cellular, and you know how it is in the early days of anything. There's a bunch of competitors with all proprietary stuff, and so we had that back then in the 90s, and so that was magic. Again, it was every day someone was having to drive a truck full of candy and Cokes and stuff to machines on their route to determine, do I need to restock this candy or Coke or whatever machine? And when we started with efficiency and just said, hey, well, we're telling you, turns out you don't need to even visit this machine today. And you only need to bring, we told them exactly what to bring and where to go. And so they were prompted daily because of this, because what is it? It was just information. We had machines talking to you instead of you visiting and discovering what was going on, right? But it was still an inventory product. And I think that's why that was successful, is we didn't get caught up in all the tech and IoT stuff. And it was just like, here's the problem we're solving. What was really cool though, was then the next level from this. And I know I've said these stories before, but then when all of a sudden, when it starts really hitting a company's bottom line, your vending company, and all of a sudden you say, wow, we are now have real-time information about people's preferences for what they want to buy in this machine. And it turns out with this bank of vending machines here, people love to drink Tab and or whatever it is, or they love Snickers or the white powdered donuts.
Twinkies.
Yeah, because you know how there's banks of vending machines and they're in different locations, maybe in office buildings in downtown Portland. And so for this particular office building on the 3rd floor, there's a law firm, and it turns out they're in love with Snickers, and they're consuming Snickers, and they're running, and we're determining in real time they're running out of inventory quickly. So if we double up or triple up the number of Snickers in that machine, what did we do? We increased revenue. We increased sales on that machine. We used IoT. We just did remote knowledge using wireless and data to increase. That gets people excited right away.
Yeah.
You know? That's what gets people excited.
You just nailed it, dude.
Yeah.
You know, Rob, you're saying this, and let's see if this gets a chuckle, but I think that the cellular antenna industry owes all of its revenue to IoT, because I remember putting a few modems in machines, and then it's like, oh, there's no service until we figure it out. Hey, what if we stuck an antenna on top of the machine and just ran it to the modem? Boom. And then 2 weeks later, there were 17 antenna vendors.
Yes, because that was another example. As soon as a vending machine could let you swipe a credit card, sales go up, because people had a credit card, but they didn't always have. Remember, the exact change light would come on the vending machine? That's a sales killer, because people are like, oh, I'm not going to do it. I don't have the right amount of change to do this. That was always, and that was one of the things we monitored. We said, hey, did the exact change light come on? Because that's a sales skill. The inverse of the merchandising I'm talking about, of adding products people want, was also you quickly in real time found out the products people didn't ever buy. And you quickly pulled those out of the machine and never put them there again. So having that human preferences, when I was trying to, I was doing this edge intelligence startup thing a long time ago. And I was taking some of the ideas of, I prototyped some of this. It was kind of like this idea of collaborative edge devices. And so I was still thinking about vending machines, but I was thinking about these edge nodes talking to each other about inventory. So now imagine this. I'm walking onto the first floor of a building and I go to the vending machine and I want Snickers, and they're out of Snickers, but I have a display on the machine. And because I've got communications with other machines and nodes all talking to each other peer to peer, the machine says to the customer, hey, no problem. On the 3rd floor, there's a machine that has the Snickers you're looking for. And all of a sudden I can make the sale. Or I could also say, and because for your trouble, I'm going to take 10 cents off the price of the Snickers.
And you get a coupon from the insurance company that they're selling data from this, because you know, they're making you walk up 3 floors and get your heart rate up for that day.
Yeah, exactly.
Dude,
exactly. Sharing.
So I'm out of coffee. You guys talk too much.
Sorry.
See my coffee.
Sorry.
See, look, it's totally empty. I got to wash this stuff.
I'm empty too.
Yeah. Amazing. You know, in fact, I think we should have a separate episode, one of these episodes called How to Scope a High Impact IoT Solution, or a solution that matters. So just expand on this last bit that you guys are talking about, because it's not really about the project itself. It's really about the value proposition up front. So you guys digressed, but I think you digressed in a really interesting direction. And I'm almost tempted to edit this last part out so that we can save it for the next episode because we're running really long here.
We'll repeat it.
Oh yeah, we'll
plan. We'll come up with lots of high impact ideas where it's value fast.
Yes,
value.
And we can spend 25 minutes into a co-op versus MQTT payload and what works best. Exactly.
Sounds great.
Yeah, nobody cares. Customers don't care about any of this stuff at all.
Not even close.
Yeah. What do they care about? Show me the money.
Show me the money.
Yeah.
Dinero, Leonard. Dinero.
Exactly. It's dinero.
Okay. Who wants to take us out?
Fun coupons. I think David's going to take us out.
Yeah, you take us out.
So, representing Portland, Oregon, and the beautiful Pacific Northwest, we thank you for putting up. Hopefully, you still standing up and enjoy another IoT Coffee Talk, where we give you free information from world-renowned UN Nation Committee participating world leaders, Scrum, Ninja, Agile, Waterfall Swimming Masters, bringing you value every day through all sorts of networks. So if you liked us, if you don't like us, you still have to hit like, subscribe, share with your friends, IoTCoffeeTalk.com. San Diego's repping, Washington State and Walla Walla and that beautiful part of the country and Portland, Oregon. And Stephanie that did a cameo appearance from somewhere in the beautiful state of Texas. We thank you for your attendance and we'll see you guys next week. Don't forget to click, like, and share.
Wow, that was wonderful.
Peace out.
Bye.